All right, everyone, it's been a long time coming. Supposedly, we're supposed to have a ceasefire deal between Israel and Hamas right now, but it hasn't materialized. I wonder why. Just another example of fine Western diplomacy in action. Here's the skinny. I don't suspect that there will be a binding or lasting ceasefire deal that's actually agreed to unless we re-elect Donald Trump. If the Trump administration comes in, they'll be able to broker a ceasefire. Trump had failed, actually, at creating a lasting peace resolution between the Israeli government and the PLO and Hamas. That's why he pivoted to North Korea. Getting a ceasefire is different, though. That's a little bit easier. But the Biden administration, they're not competent to broker such a thing. Any deal brokered by the Biden administration is going to be lopsided anyway, and at least one party will reject it. He's managed to wade into a weird situation where the United States is on kind of teeter-tottering terms with both sides, where really neither side really wants to play ball with the United States as far as diplomacy goes. What I worry about is that things will escalate into a wider regional war, again, with potential attacks from Iran, the resurgence of Hezbollah. Hamas itself is not a threat to Israel in the existential sense because they just don't have the manpower or the technological superiority to be able to do much. Their air force is paragliders, for example. They have the ability to fire rockets and to abduct people and to go on shooting sprees near the border. Beyond that, their capacity is limited. Hezbollah is a standing army, a significant one. It's as big, I think it's as big as the IDF almost. They have the toys that make the noise. Iran has a large standing military force and considerable amounts of drone and missile technology. They've been developing that disproportionately for their own military purposes. My worry is that if either Kamala is elected or in the interim period before the election happens, all hell breaks loose, what the fuck is the United States going to be able to actually do to save people's lives? Not that the current administration would be inclined to even try to do so. Probably just sit back and Kamala would be laughing at the footage. There'd be 1,000 dead kids in some Israeli school that got hit by a rocket, and she'll look at that on loop and masturbate or something like that. It's a kind of psycho that she really is. People need to understand, people like Hillary Clinton, Kamala Harris, etc., there are actual psychopaths in Washington, D.C. Most of them are just delusional or egotistical. Most of them aren't psychos. Hell, Donald Trump is an egotist. J.D. Vance is an egotist. Tulsi Gabbard's an egotist. Rand Paul is more on the idealistic side. I think he's about as close as you'll find to someone in Congress that isn't constantly inebriated and constantly seeking ways to screw people over. Him and Massey and a few others, I suppose. And then you've got the people that are only there for the money and or prestige, like a Mitt Romney or so, or an Elizabeth Warren. But there are a handful of them that are legit psychopathic. Do I think that a psychopath, number one, is interested in brokering a ceasefire, unless it's on extremely favorable political and economic terms, in which case you have to have the intelligence to broker it? Number one, interested in doing so. Number two, able to do so. Let's say that Kamala Harris goes to Israel. She's talking to Netanyahu. Or she goes to Palestine to meet with the technical governing authority there. Do you really think those talks are going to go well? If Trump shows up, he's just going to swagger in and he's going to lay the law down and say, look, this needs to end. Enough is enough. What the fuck do you want? What the fuck do you want? Here, we're going to broker something. Sit the fuck down at this table. And he can actually get that done. His foreign policy, his diplomatic chops were disproportionately good during his administration. Like on domestic policy, there were some lapses with regards to Trumpianism. With foreign policy, though, he knocked it out of the park on multiple levels. He stood toe-to-toe with China. You think that Kamala with Tim Walz as a running mate is going to do that? Me no think so. He was able to prevent the Russians from invading Ukraine. Allegedly, he told Putin during a private meeting that he would bomb Moscow if they invaded Ukraine. That's ballsy. Over Taiwan, China wasn't really rattling swords over Taiwan when Trump was president. No Ukrainian invasion, little Hamas activity. ISIS got debilitated because of Trump's foreign policy of, hey, we're going to set back and let the Shiites take care of it. seem to work. ISIS is now an afterthought in most parts of the world that it once predominated in. I mean, even Al-Qaeda was wary of working with them. About their only allies were Boko Haram, which unfortunately still exists as well and regularly kidnaps schoolgirls and forces them into marriages with people 5 times their age, and things like that. Under Trumpian policy, ECOWAS was strong. Venezuela it wasn't voting to annex Essequibo. You had foreign policy successes in Korea. I mean, I'm looking at the Abraham Accords. I'm looking at a litany of different things that Trump did when he was in the executive office. And the foreign policy was a 9 out of 10. On foreign policy, Trump was great in his first term. I really hope that he gets back in there and gives us another 4 years of great foreign policy. If for no other purpose, he got along with goddamn Mexican president Obrador, for example. Mexico, I think Obrador is gone now. He supposedly he hated Hispanic people, but he was actually, if not besties, at least on relatively friendly terms with the Mexican president, and had a warm reception there. We had a foreign policy success with India. India, typically, it's like Turkey. I know that Turkey's in NATO, but typically it straddles the line between East and West. India has been doing the same. They're a member of BRICS, but they also hardwall the Chinese sometimes, and they gave Trump an enormously warm reception. There were people that were setting up like statues of Trump and praying for him and stuff like that. You saw like 500,000 goddamn people in the stadium when Trump was speaking. He could have given a bit of a better speech, but he still got a warm reception. All of these foreign policy successes. With Joe Biden, it's more like even friendly countries are like, what's the point of conducting diplomacy directly with the United States? Biden's out to lunch. And nobody wants to meet with Kamala Harris. No, why would they want to? You think that if Kamala Harris gets into office, that she's going to be able to go to any country in the world and get a warm reception other than maybe like Canada? I mean, our closest allies, they'll do a golf clap for her, and they'll have shove tea with the king and stuff like that. That's fine, but it's not going to lead to any meaningful foreign policy changes. Kamala Harris is simply not equipped properly to do that sort of thing. Donald Trump is. Biden's diplomacy, meanwhile, and technically it's not his, it's his handlers, the oligarchs behind the scenes. The foreign policy is a mess. He's managed to publicly alienate the United States from both Israel and Palestine. That's why you've got Gaza protesters on one hand and Netanyahu snubbing him on the other. How are you supposed to conduct diplomacy? Either take a hardline side and a hardline approach, or smooth things over with everyone and calm them down. You can do one or the other, but you can't have it both ways. You can't do the fence-straddling policy thing and prevail in most of the world. That policy will work fine if you're in France. It'll work fine if you're talking to the Swedish government. It'll work fine if you're in Canada. It doesn't work in those parts of the world that we most need to conduct meaningful diplomacy in to keep things calm. And honestly, the administration's more likely to just gear up and bomb people than to conduct meaningful diplomacy anyway. I think Kamala will start a major regional war on purpose, simply to be a wartime president. She is an unmitigated psychopath. You can look at the way she speaks, the things that she says, the way that she acts, and the way that she laughs at dead and dying people on a regular basis. You can see she is a legit psycho. This is not a joke. This is not a drill, people. We need to stop Kamala Harris from getting into office, because otherwise things won't just be popping off there. I'm sure that they'll pop off domestically too. That's about all. Peace out.